I'm going to welcome to the stage Creak.
All right. I'm going to assume the that way arrow is the next slide.
Yep.
Okay, perfect. Hi everyone. Thank you so much for coming today. Hello? Oh. Which way? Up there? At you guys. Oh, amazing. So other than the love life in general of our spiders, I am specifically going to be talking about one of our most notorious species of spiders in Sydney, and I'm assuming many people are familiar with them, but that would be the Sydney funnel web spider. So, across. I'm having really good luck with clickers today. There we go. So before I get started, I just want to acknowledge the fact that my fieldwork was done on Indigenous lands and unconceded as well. So, oh my God, I keep doing this one. There we go. So obviously we're here, but all the field work that I've done has been in Lane Cove National Park, so relatively local, or in Ku-ring-gai National Park, which is obviously just up a bit further north. So, if you know, you know. Hands up if you've been like walking down your driveway in the middle of the night, or like it's along a footpath or something and you get hit with like a massive like silk web across your face and you're dancing around, you've thrown your keys on the ground, there's a spider somewhere on you and everyone's freaking out. I mean, yes, that's me, 100%. So Sydney is very well known for our spiders, big and small. And we've already had some incredible huntsmen, but they like to wiggle into some of the best spots there. But they're very common, and they're all, in my opinion, absolutely beautiful. They do have something fairly universally common about them all, and that is that most of them really aren't going to kill you. So the vast majority of all of our species of spiders, which is, as you've already heard, like tens of thousands, they all have venom, but that venom is not going to do any damage to us, except for this one. Lucky us! This is the Sydney funnel web spider. So local to Sydney, they are one of around 35 to 40 species at the moment, and of all of those species, this is the most dangerous, and they are particularly dangerous to people. So their sort of scientific name is Atrax robustus, for those of you who don't know. It's a very old world species of spider, okay? So they've lived for a very long time. They've had a long time to evolve, and there are 13 confirmed deaths by these guys, and since then, since the invention of our anti-venom and everything like that came through in the 80s, we haven't seen any more deaths. Great. They don't know that, and it hasn't stopped them from trying, admittedly. So you might be wondering, okay, well, how are they doing this? What's going on here? So turns out that the mature males of this species, which is this guy here, they have a very specific protein in their venom, it's called hexatoxin, that targets the like neural pathways of people. And I say people, I mean primates. And primates specifically. So cats and dogs, apparently fine. There's even been a study recently, 2020, that had flies gets impaled with this venom, and they were like, ow. They got back up and flew off like 24 hours later. So it's just us, really. So it feels a bit like it's a targeted attack here. And it leaves us wondering, well, why is this happening? Oh no. There we go. That's me every day of my life during this PhD. So the long story short here is that we don't know why this is happening, and it's why we need a deluded ecologist and scientist to try and work out some more information about these guys and their sort of natural behaviours as to why they may have evolved such a complex venom that apparently doesn't do anything to any other animal except for us. And we weren't here when they evolved. So before I jump into all of the love life parts that I'm sure you're all super keen to hear about, I do get asked this question a lot, and it's can I set them on fire? Can I burn my house down if I find one? First of all, I'm pretty sure that your insurance company will not accept that as an excuse, so maybe don't. But I can also tell you that no, it doesn't work, because I did it. I went out into the field, we tagged a whole bunch of burrows, which were burrows of the Sydney funnel-web spider, and then we had national parks and the Rural Fire Service come through, do a burn for us, set everybody on fire. Look at that. 1 month, not even. It was 5 days post-fire I went back in, and all of them were just like rebooted. So don't set your house on fire. Really won't work. They will just come back. However, with that in mind, I did go back to these sites a year after the fire had come through, and I had a look at areas that had been burnt and unburnt and sort of just left to be in their natural state in very similar locations. And we did see a very big difference in the number of individual burrows that were left. So over time, we were seeing this big drop in how many were present in the habitat surrounding. And we thought maybe that could be because we've got a lot more plant life left here. There's a lot more shade going on. It could also just be because I don't know if anyone has stood on like freshly burned like soil. It is so hot. And this species of spider, among many other sort of old world species of spiders, which are like your tarantulas, mouse spiders, trapdoors, they're all classified as old world spiders because they have this sort of primitive traits left over, and one of those traits is 2 pairs of book lungs, and book lungs are the organs that they can breathe out of. And it just means that they are actually very, very susceptible to dehydration, and most of the time these guys actually require a really, really humid environment. So we're thinking maybe it could be something to do with that, but we need to do a lot more testing, and we need like fireproof thermometer probes and stuff, which I don't know if that's been invented that in a small enough scale that I can stick into a spider burrow, but anyway, out of the scope of my study. But we did find that there was a reaction which I kind of didn't anticipate. We actually thought they'd be fine because they have evolved here in a landscape that has been burning for tens of thousands of years, admittedly with cool burns. The burn that was conducted was supposed to be a low intensity hazard reduction or a prescribed burn, as we've just been like chatting about. But even that, in comparison to what a cool burn can look like, it burned very hot. So we definitely had scarring, scorch marks up to my head kind of thing, which is very hot for a low intensity burn. So I wouldn't be surprised if there was something going on with that. So we'll jump back into our murderous tendencies and our love life. So we know that it's our mature males that have this venom. This is one of our girls. And we wanted to see, okay, well, these boys have this venom, yeah. The girls also have the venom, but it's in a much lesser quantity in their in what they can put out is that specific protein within the venom. It's still there, it's just in a lower quantity. So it's specifically the mature males, once they've reached sexual maturity, they're up and they're out and they're looking for a girl. So we wanted to see, okay, maybe there's something going on here with how far they're willing to travel, what they're encountering during their travels to find a female. So that's when we decided to have a look at how they were traveling, and turns out we are kind of just really big obstacles in this massive spider orgy that goes on, because there were multiple males mating with multiple females mating with multiple males, which was just great for them, so no shame on them. They had a great time. But you might be wondering, how does one do this? Well, you go out, it's me, at night, because they're a nocturnal species, and you take your really, really long forceps, because I don't want to die, and collect them in some big containers. So this is Harold. Yes, all of them were named. this is Harold with a tracker on. So we decided to track all of our mature males for this study. So the tracker he's wearing is a little radio tracker. It's not GPS. There's no such thing as a GPS tracker small enough at the time. So that tracker is, yay big. It's very little. And it weighs like 0.17 of a gram, which is significantly less than the spider. Once they were attached, which admittedly was a trial, that was interesting, had to figure that one out. Turns out the people at Riot Art and Craft don't know what glue sticks to a funnel web. That's okay, worked it out eventually. Bit of trial and error. Spiders were absolute champs throughout that whole process. And then after that, we tracked them. So this is Harold's tracking process there. So we tracked them essentially as long as that tracker stayed on, because they really didn't want to keep them on. Fair enough. But they also just were prone to being popped off, or we had some instances where the spiders got eaten, which, such is life. My supervisor did track a gecko for a couple of days until he realised that it was not a spider any longer. Took the gecko back to the lab and waited for it to poop the tracker out. It was a lovely meal. So now we know what eats them. That's great. We didn't know that before. Complete accident. But Harold here, you can see he's got about 15 points of movement there. He was actually tracked for 3 weeks. So that had me sitting there going, what are you doing? As a little step backwards, once these boys reach sexual maturity, they have 1 season to mate and they die. So I was sitting there going, you are wasting time, buddy. What are you doing? You are moving 50% of the time. What's going on? So we thought, okay, maybe there's something to go with the weather here. What is influencing this kind of behaviour? Because it's a bit weird. They're really limited on how long they have available to them after they've reached that stage of mating. So we asked, are we going to see any kind of temperature preference with their travelling? And we also wanted to see, is the rain affecting how they're moving? And I mean, the rain especially is something that I think a lot of people will be familiar with. We're often told in the media that, oh my God, it's going to be a big rainstorm. It means all the funnel webs are going to come out, blah, blah, blah. So I was like, okay, this is like a double whammy. Good myth busting here. Let's have a look and see what happens. So sorry, if you don't know that song, you're too young and get out of the audience. But for the temperature, we did discover that he will move 500 metres, not quite, in a spider's perspective. He will move further distances if the temperature suits him. So if we were having a nice day before that was cool weather, but not freezing, but cool kind of weather, plus a warmer night, was when we were seeing a greater distance of movement travelled by these guys. So much further. The furthest distance we had was 60 metres, which doesn't sound like very far, but also kind of a tumultuous journey if you're like this big, and there's probably I'm imagining dragons swooping down on them, but it's really birds. They've got to climb mountains and valleys, which is to us rocks and a couple of steps. So, it's pretty far for a little guy. But we just discovered that, they were definitely had a preference for the sort of cooler day and a warmer night for them to travel through. So with our rainfall, we did see that we kind of had the opposite to what we were expecting, which was an absolute journey for me and all of my volunteers, because we did this study during the La Nina years, and it was raining to the point that Lane Cove National Park flooded my field sites, and obviously that's going to have an effect on how far they're moving and whether they're willing to move or not. But in this case, the amount of days I went out there with my massive antenna and my radio and my gumboots full of water, and just getting absolutely sopping wet, and I go to the same spot I'd be like, the spider hasn't moved. He's significantly smarter than I am right now. I'm feeling the pain. So we discovered that they, like, essentially the greater, like, amount of rainfall that there was, the less likely they were to move. So it wasn't necessarily too much of a distance thing. Once they decided to go, if it was raining, they went. They didn't go far, but they did. They did move. But if it was raining sort of more than a couple of mils, they were like, I'm gonna stay dry tonight, I think. I'm gonna keep myself nice and clean and dry. So it just meant that it's kind of giving us the opposite result to what we initially expected with these guys, especially given what we've always heard in the media. And that stems from a paper that was published about 20 years ago, I think. And that paper was actually working on the females of these guys. And they found that when it's raining, we're getting a lot of these females evacuating their burrows because the burrows are being flooded. But it didn't necessarily account for active mature males that were out searching for a mate. So that's where we're sort of seeing that difference here. And it's also kind of important to note that although the females are dangerous, they pack a punch, probably should still go to hospital if you get bitten by one. The males, on the other hand, are the ones that will kill you if you don't go to hospital. So it's definitely why we wanted to focus on this species and the males in particular for these guys for this study. So I'll leave you with a question. It's a nice quick talk today, guys. Would you kill for your lover? Because apparently these guys will kill us for their lovers. And would you walk through the storm for her or him or them? So yeah, thanks guys.
Okay.
Yeah, heaps of time.
Any questions? All right, I'll start nearest to me.
How far does the Sydney funnel web go out? Like north, south, west?
The range of these guys, so there's a bit of a contentious issue. There's a lot of work being done with what is within the species. At the moment, what's described is they go sort of as far south as like towards the Illawarra region and then up as far north as Newcastle. And then even out to the west, there's even records of them like hitting like over the Blue Mountains, which is a very big range for something so small. They are technically classified as something called a short range endemic. They are terrible dispersers. They can't balloon like a lot of other species of spiders can. So when the spiderlings hatch, they have to walk to find a burrow and they're tiny. So they really don't disperse far. So there are currently quite a lot of people working on the genetics of this species. But the Sydney funnel web in particular is, at the moment, classified as being, between Newcastle and sort of Illawarra area.
If you had to choose between encountering a male funnel web spider or a bear, no, just you don't have to answer. You don't have to answer that.
The funnel web every time.
I know from my pool and many other pools that they tend to fall in the pool and stay alive for a very long time. Just wondering what that means in terms of their ability to withstand flooding of their burrows.
Yes, that's actually something that I was really interested in because I did actually have burrows noted in my field sites that went under the waterline, and I was expecting those females to have evacuated that area. But for those ones, it took a little bit longer than the fire actually. It was probably within about a week. I started to see silk being deployed again, so it meant that she hadn't left, which I guess they're not under the water for a sustained period of time with the flood. It's more if they get caught in the flood that it's more of a risk for them because they're probably going to get damaged or eaten by something. They're very fragile, especially the females. They're so fat, they just can't like move their bodies very well. So they're a little bit fragile, which is why they're burrow dwelling. They tend to not leave their burrows for their whole lifespan. That is assumed knowledge that I'm at the moment working on because there have been sightings. So one of the photos I think the photo on my last slide is a female outside of her burrow, which is wild because, yeah, they usually don't come out of their burrows. So, and this has happened a few times, so there's definitely a question mark over that. But yeah, I feel like I've definitely diverged from the original question here. It was spiders in pools. The other thing with these guys is that a lot of spiders, but particularly old world spiders, have a very slow metabolism. Very, very slow. So, like, these guys only need to be fed, like, I have a friend that has a pet one that feeds her, like, every 3 or 4 months. In the wild, I've noticed when I was tracking the burrows during that fire sort of experiment, I was only seeing food parcels being pushed out of their burrows once every couple of months, not even. Sometimes over winter they won't eat at all. So they have very, very, very slow metabolism, which kind of does allow them to be like sunk on the bottom of a pool for who knows how long. At the moment, I think the general consensus is a few days, and still be fine when you pull them out. So definitely something to be careful of. Don't assume it's dead.
Okay, we have a question up here.
It stands to reason that funnel web venom must kill something that's useful to them, or else they wouldn't have evolved that ability. So is that geckos, or what is it?
Absolutely. I don't know what it is yet. There has been very little research done on that. I personally am coming from an ecology background, so I don't work on the chemistry or the sort of venom toxicology side, but I do work alongside people that do that. And I don't actually know why we haven't tested this. I mean, I know why. It's because it's a neurotoxin, and to be able to test a neurotoxin on a native animal, you need to get permission to kill the animal, essentially. Whereas if it's something like snake venom, which is often like a hemotoxin, you just pop a bit of the venom into a vial of blood. You don't need to kill the animal to get it. You'll see the blood sort of coagulate with that venom, whereas with these guys, it attacks our nervous system. So I don't know the specifics of it, but I very much suspect that there is a native animal out there that would suffer from these guys, and I do think there's probably a defensive mechanism for them. It just hasn't been looked at yet, and it's actually really hard to work out what that might be without, having some sacrifices.
A question and a comment. The comment being that somewhere or other I'd heard that they are venomous or fatally venomous to some rodents, as in mice and baby rats or something. And my question was, what's their lifespan?
Okay, great. So the mice and the baby rats, they have found that some of the the very little ones can suffer just also from the injuries of being bitten by one, because they are big. So the fangs, or the chelicera, which is the fancy word for it, on these guys are very large, and they have a lot of power. So just the act of being bitten by one can do a lot of internal organ damage. But it's just also a bit of the trauma. There is, in that particular paper that we found, rodents were having a pain response, but were also still getting up and walking off after a while. So there's going to be an age thing there, which is much the case with something like a redback. Now for us, if it's a child that's bitten by a redback, that's a hospital sort of thing. But if it's an adult, and a healthy adult, it's an ice pack and some Panadol. So there could be an effect of that. And the question, sorry, age, lifespan. Fantastic question. I love this question. They're actually one of the younger lived, I guess, less longed lifespan. What is the word? Shorter, thank you. There you go. Guys, I have dyslexia, don't at me. Okay. So they have a shorter lifespan in comparison to some of our other old world spiders. So funnel webs, the oldest known one was a pet, because no one's done a study on them. They're very understudied. And she was 20 years old when she died. So the males will only live to about 4 to 6 years old. So they will reach sexual maturity at like 4 to 6 years, and then they are up there out and they're on the hunt for a gal, and then they die at the end. They just go till they die. They die happy, I guess. But the girls, much longer lifespan. In comparison, we have a species in Western Australia of trapdoor spider and this is the oldest recorded spider in the world. She was 43 years old when she died. And she didn't die of natural causes. She was killed by a parasitic wasp. So, could have lived longer, which is absolutely wild to me. I love that. Very long-lived animals.
Okay, we have another question up here.
Yeah.
Hello, I loved that, by the way. That was very good. 2 quick questions. How close have you come to being bitten?
Very good question.
That's the first half question.
Okay. So, how close have I come to being bitten? Look, I have to be very careful, OH&S and all, with my university. But, I mean, when I've been attaching the trackers on the spiders, I actually knocked them out. So I used a bit of gas, which helped me sedate them for I had about 30 seconds to have them sedated. And then I would I essentially cut a donut of sponge out with a hole in the middle, and it was damp, so I popped that on top of them while they were a little bit like dopey, and that sort of like held their legs down so that they could wake up. I didn't want to gas them for too long because I didn't know what the effects would be of that. They'd wake up, they were mad about it. They're sitting there trying to eat the sponge, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to be as quick as I can, I'm so sorry. But yes, there was definitely a couple of occasions where the gas wore off a little quicker than I was prepared for, and someone did decide to climb through the hole of the donut, and I was like, oh my God. But otherwise, I feel like I was pretty safe with them, and like, yeah, didn't actually have any like major close encounters. Like I never touched them with my hands because I do not have a death wish. And there's also literally no gloves that they can't pierce through. So there's no point. Like I just, yeah. So, yeah.
You also answered my second question, so thank you.
No worries.
Having been in amateur radio for 61 years, I was amazed at your description of the tracking transmitter you put on them. I found it almost unbelievable, but you'd be unhappy. But let me tell you, lady, when I see a spider, the only thing my brain is doing is tracking the trajectory of the shoe sole to target.
Oh, no! I mean, look, it's understandable. A lot of people do not like spiders. They do have a way of walking that is a bit creepy, admittedly, and the eyes, the legs, the hair. I don't know. I get it, but also I hope sometimes that my love for them becomes a little bit contagious because I actually think that they're beautiful, and if it makes you feel any better with the funnel webs in particular, their evolution of their eyesight was like low on the priority list. So they're not very good at seeing. And when you upset them, everyone knows that super stereotypical like funnel web posturing. You upset them and they rear up. They're essentially blind when they do that, because their eyes are on the back of their head. So when they're lifting up, they're just walking around with like a freaking blindfold on. It doesn't mean poke them, because it will still hurt if they get you, but they are almost a little bit disabled in that kind of situation. So if that makes you feel any better, I don't know. It makes me feel better sometimes, but yeah.
A round of applause for Caitlin.
Thank you.